The Academy of Osseointegration is widely considered to be the world's premier organisation in implant dentistry. In the years since Professor Per Ingvar Brånemark first introduced osseointegrated implants, the Academy has been at the forefront of disseminating advances in the art and science of dental implantology. Today, dentists the world over routinely place implants with an extraordinarily high rate of success, grow bone to allow implant placement in areas of deficient bone volume, and choose from an array of options for restoring these implants from a myriad of implant designs. The Academy itself has grown to an active membership of 6,000 from over 70 countries around the globe. Our annual meetings draw up to 4,000 attendees to share knowledge and camaraderie. Our official journal, the International Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Implants, is one of the most highly respected journals in dentistry, with a circulation of over 10,000. So it might be somewhat of a surprise, particularly for those who grew up in the days when implants were a well-established fact, to learn of the origins of the Academy and indeed of the early history of osseointegration itself. In the interviews that follow, you will hear the story of the beginnings of the science of implant dentistry and the origins of the Academy of Osseointegration from the dental professionals who were part of it. We return to the site of the original study club meetings to listen as many of the founding members of that group share their memories of those early days. Dr. Gerald Barrack, Dr. Charles Berman, Dr. James Doundoulakis, Dr. Jeffrey Burks, Dr. Paul Hoffman, Dr. Robert Jaffin, Dr. Allan Silverstein, Dr. Clifford Salm, Dr. Arthur Weinberg, along with Dr. Ronald Odrich, a New York periodontist who was present in the days when implant dentistry began its transformation. We also talk with our early leaders, the presidents of the AO, during its first 10 years, to hear their stories of the growth of the Academy and of implant dentistry. Dr. William Laney, Dr. Thomas Collins, Dr. Paul Krogh, Dr. Stephen Parel, and Dr. Michael Block. You will see in their faces the pride of having participated in a bold adventure that, to this day, is transforming the profession, and better understand why people have such a strong allegiance to the organisation today. For many years, dentists and researchers had been attempting to find ways of replacing the roots of missing teeth. While some degree of success was in fact achieved with blade and subperiosteal implants, success rates were only about 50%. And more significantly, when these implants failed, they often devastated the remaining jawbone, leaving large defects that were difficult to treat and often impossible to restore to function. Most dentists avoided placing these implants and looked askance at those practitioners who did, advising their patients to steer clear no matter how desperate they might feel.
It's like the Wild West. Very little research, very little academic research.
Our experience at Mayo had been only to take failing implants out.
My relationship is certainly not unique, where the implants of that time were completely negative, almost totally negative. They lacked predictability except in one very negative sense, and there were many, many failures. And somebody coming aboard lately will not really know about what that was like.
My experience with implants was with subperiosteal implants, and when they failed, it was a horrific event.
We were taking out more implants than anything else, and implants was a dirty word.
In May 1982, the Swedish research physician Dr. Per Ingvar Brånemark introduced dentists in North America to the concept of osseointegration. This came at a conference in Toronto, Canada, organised by George Zarb, Chair of Prosthodontics at the University of Toronto. In the late 1970s, Dr. Zarb had completed replication studies of Dr. Brunnemark's work. By 1982, it was more than a promising new idea. It had been thoroughly tested, ready for routine clinical use. Dr. Zarb invited the chairs of the oral surgery and prosthodontic departments of every North American dental school to attend. Perhaps unsurprisingly, 96% of them did. None came away more impressed than the late Dr. Daniel Sullivan of Washington, D.C., who went on to become one of our early presidents, as well as a pioneer in endosseous implants. Along with his partner, Dr. Lloyd Vaquet, and their oral surgeon colleague, Dr. Paul Krogh, they went to Gothenburg for training with Dr. Brunnemark. 2 months later, on October the 28th, 1982, they placed the first osseointegrated implants in the United States.
Dr. Brunnemark wanted only to do totally edentulous mandibles. Well, we kind of surprised him, and we had 2 edentulous mandibles and 2 patients. One was an edentulous maxilla, and one we needed to put a couple of implants in between natural teeth. He almost took his equipment back, and we had quite a little discussion convincing him that in the United States we had 2 jaws that we could work on.
Did Brunnemark think you were a little maverick?
He used to call me the cowboy.
Meanwhile, 2 New York dentists, periodontist Dr. Charles Berman and his prosthodontic colleague Dr. Gerald Barrack, flew to Toronto in 1984 following Dr. Barrack's attendance at a lecture given by Dr. Brunnemark in New York. On the plane home, Dr. Berman's infectious enthusiasm quickly led to the formation of the New York Osseointegration Study Group, a small conclave of friends with a shared passion to understand and share knowledge about this new science. They held their meetings at the Columbus Citizens Foundation in Manhattan with the help of Dr. Frank Salenza Sr., a well-known and highly respected prosthodontist and teacher. Did you immediately on that flight home start talking about the need for some organization, study club or what have you?
Yeah, because we knew that all of this was more technically difficult for the surgeons and the periodontists because they were learning something totally new. Ours, we were still going to use basic prosthodontic principles of precision and impression making and so on. So there was a great excitement, but we also knew that we were going to have to learn from each other. Yeah. There wasn't anyone really to learn it from, so we were just going to have to join together and learn. The airplane was bursting from the energy and the enthusiasm and excitement that those 4 days. My recollection really starts in 1983 at the Greater New York Academy of Prosthodontics meeting where Dr. Zarb and Brunnemark were given an entire afternoon to present the concept of osseointegration. And I think that in all fairness, if you were to ask those 400 attendees before the meeting if they would like to be associated with the concept of implants, probably 90% or more would have said no because of what you say about the bad connotations. And after 3 hours of listening to Zarb and Brunnemark, I think the entire tone changed. And after that meeting, probably 90% wanted to get some more information because they weren't aware of it. And I recall after they finished, people were lined up in the aisles waiting to talk with them.
I remember that meeting. That was one of the most amazing GNYAP, the Greater New York Academy of Prosthodontic events in history, because everyone was fixated on his presentation showing us the rabbit bone, the tibias, and the movement of the blood cells. I mean, he had it all videotaped. And at the end of his presentation, I could not believe the ovation that man received. I mean, people in unison just jumped out of their chairs, and they gave him an ovation, I would say, good 6-7 minutes.
Given the current state of the art and science of dental implants, it may be difficult to imagine just how exciting this new development was at that time. What was most thrilling for these young professionals was the rigor of the science behind it. The excitement and enthusiasm that Doctors Barrack and Berman first felt was immediately obvious in their colleagues as well.
What Brånemark did was actually research and had data, and George and Francis were duplicating the data.
Those were exciting times?
Very, very. Actually, I got a call from George Zarb, who said that, Bill, I think that this is a breakthrough in implant dentistry we've been looking for.
Nearly every dentist who became aware of this groundbreaking new technology wanted to become involved themselves. But in those early years, Professor Brånemark limited those who he allowed to take the training. Initially, only graduate-trained oral surgeons and prosthodontists, shortly to include periodontists. As the New York group formed, it grappled with the issue of just how to organize and conduct itself. Indeed, even the name was uncertain. Just who did they want to be?
Very clearly, the night that Dan Sullivan and Paul Krogh gave the lecture, we had a business meeting of our budding study club to set up some rules. And my recollection, because it was a long time ago, was I was the moderator, and we had 45 people in the room. And when the vote came up as to who should be voting members versus just associate members, the question was, should you be a diplomate or a specialist or everyone, the general practitioners as well? And that was a very heated meeting, and the vote was 22 to 22. I abstained because I was moderating. And we went around the room a second time, and people got very violent and stood up and said they had every right to do this. And we took another vote, and it was still 22-22. And then Charlie decided to settle it.
Charlie, it's your turn.
I voted twice.
Charlie voted twice, and it was...
Let's go back, though, to the very first study club, if I may. How many people were a part of that first meeting here at the Columbus Club?
Our first few organizational meetings were basically New York and New Jersey people. But then when we had the first lecture here by Dan Sullivan and Paul Krogh, people came from Boston and Washington, D.C. I think the total was probably 95 or 100 who came to that first presentation by Dan and Paul.
That was on March 15th, 85.
That was March 85.
Yeah, that's
right.
when I attended. Since we have the original guy, we'll step back a little bit in time and go back to the New York Study Club. And Paul, you're the guy who was actually involved in changing the name from American Academy of Osseointegration to Academy. So would you talk about that?
And the first order of business was, what should the name of this thing be? Well, is it a society? Is it an association? No, it should be it should be academic, it should be scholarly. Okay, then it's got to be an academy. Okay, that's given. Should it be great in New York? No, it's got to be national. No, it's got to be international. Next the world, next the universe, you know. So really, it was very exciting. So International Academy of this and that and the other thing. And it was my thought that adjectives were limiting. So if you left out all the adjectives and called it the Academy of Osseointegration, that would be simple and elegant. As you know, as Mel Brooks said at another time, who knew it was going to be elegant?
As the study club grew and osseointegrated implants were becoming ever more accepted by the profession, Doctors Barrack and Berman had the foresight to recognize that this group was quickly going to outgrow its original intent. The science of osseointegration was rapidly expanding and evolving. The profession was on the cusp of revolutionary change. A broader perspective with a greater responsibility was being assumed by the group. Where to go from here? Specialists only, team approach, or super generalist? To this end, they turned to Dr. William Laney to help develop and establish the Embryonic Academy and to bring to bear the full weight of his experience of working within associations. Dr. Laney became the Academy's first president and quickly developed a lasting relationship with the International Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Implants, still the official journal of the AO today. I'd like to take you back to the very beginning. 1985, there was a group of individuals in New York who'd formed a study club.
I got a phone call from Gerald Barrack and Charlie Berman it was about 1985, 86, something like that. And they had obviously been meeting with a study club group in New York. And they had primarily just shared ideas and had case experiences with regards to osseointegration and so on. But they were interested really in somebody that could kind of pull things together, the loose ends, and get an organization going.
What does it mean to have been the first president of the Academy of Osseointegration?
Oh, I have tremendous pride in the fact that they asked me to get involved, and the fact that it has grown by leaps and bounds since we originally started with a group of about, I think it was 250, 300 dentists. And to see what's happened with the membership since and the organizational structure that's developed is just mind-boggling.
Consistent with its origins, the Academy grew based on three principles: science and education, the team approach, and an international perspective. These core principles helped the Academy grow to preeminence and guide us still as we advance into our fourth decade. The whole team approach to this is crucial.
It really is, and that tied right in with my early and continuing to this day goal of the team approach to this whole the field of implants.
I'd say it was part of the progression of its growth, and you could see that this thing had tremendous potential. The meeting itself, the theme of the meeting, and the comfort level that people came or received when they came to the meeting was such that everybody felt welcome. Nobody felt excluded. I think some of the things we did during that era opened the meeting up to not only people in the United States, but we created policies that welcomed our European colleagues, for example, and made it easy for them to become interested and join if they wished. We opened it up to general dentistry a great deal more than it was, not that they were excluded, but simply that they didn't, in many instances, even know who we were or what we were. So we tried to get as many general dentists interested as we could.
What is it about the AO that is the natural attraction for individuals interested in implant dentistry?
I think the leadership and this very national meeting, the Academy News, it's a complex of different items that all point toward excellence, and it's once we get a restorative dentist, a prosthodontist, oral surgeon, periodontist to come to one of these meetings, he's trapped. He's got to join.
I think perhaps one of the most important developments took place, and that development was associating the Academy with a scientific journal, the Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Implants. How many years were you editor?
20.
I mean, when you look back now to the very first issues and how much we've published, the vast amount of science, how staggering is that?
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. You know, when I think about the first few issues, we had to send out invitations, personal invitations for people to contribute.
The International Journal of Oral Maxillofacial Implants, as the publication of this group, is a very high quality peer-reviewed journal. And the material in it is broad-based over international base. So it's very, very good, very strong. The transfer of knowledge is key, and having all this refereed material to read, and all the membership being able to read it cover to cover is a great opportunity. So I think it's very strong. It's a very nice collation of material.
While always adhering to our core principles, the Academy provides something more, something special to our members that most other groups are unable to provide. Practical knowledge with a scientific background, collegiality, and a spirit of sharing across specialties and borders. You had the privilege during your presidency to preside over the 10th anniversary meeting. How different was that to those early meetings in Dallas?
Oh, the Academy itself has taken on a life of its own. It's by far the best implant meeting of any.
You still see the Academy as the premier implant organization?
There's no question. I think so. I've been to the others. I've spoken at the others. They're all good. They all serve a purpose, and they all serve probably a little bit different constituency in each group. The AAID, the ICOI, a little different type of individuals more interested in those groups than this group. But I think this one by far gives you the most take home. Every time you come to one of these meetings, you can't help but learn something. It gives you an excellent cross-section of different implant technologies that you don't get elsewhere. I think the commercial exhibits alone set this group apart.
The team, the members of the board knew the team was so important, and the team not only dealt with specialists, but dealt with the lab technicians, dealt with the general dentists, and to try to bring everybody together was very important. So we've always had that look to do that. And then our meetings would reflect that.
The first few meetings that I recall, the first one in Chicago, and then the ones in Dallas after that, were the most exciting meetings that I've ever been to. There was so much science involved, and there was some clinical lectures, but my recollection was most of the program was the science of it, which gave everybody a good warm feeling, because now you could get involved in something that was not just talked about, but it had some solid evidence behind it.
Not only did we focus on the patient education with all the specialists and the oral surgeons involved in this, prosthodontists, each one of the specialties in the restorative general dentist had in mind what they do for a living, and nobody was really focusing on the fact that these people come to us not for my expertise as an oral surgeon, but for teeth.
What was your first official role, if you like, in the Academy?
My first official role was a response to Bill Laney and Paul Krogh, who the Academy was 1 year old, and they decided they needed an education chairman, and wrote a nice letter, Bill Laney did, asking me if I would consider being an education chairman. And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And then we were off and running.
So the message is that the backbone of the AO should remain the dissemination of knowledge in the field of osseointegration for the benefit of all.
There's always a patient at the end of our instrument, and we better be at the top of our game. So if we maintain that level of being top of the game, knowing as much as we can, that's got to positively influence our colleagues.
You proud of your involvement in the Academy?
Oh, absolutely, it's great. I'm proud of the amount of support and the enthusiasm that our profession across the board has. And the one thing about the Academy, it's unique, is its multidisciplinary approach. It's elimination of turf, the ability for everyone to work together. So I've learned a tremendous amount. And what I've learned from my colleagues here, I've taken back to my practice.
There's a huge sense of the networking opportunity as well.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a good term. I wish I'd said that. Networking is absolutely a premier opportunity in this particular environment, in this venue. And it's just gotten better.
What advice would you give to the younger people in our profession coming into AO from a sort of a volunteering perspective?
Well, just to remember what was given to them, and that they really have an obligation to give to the next generation, and to be honest about it and to present it, you know, in an ethical way.
What do you think the Academy of Osseointegration has done for implant dentistry?
Oh, it's done tremendous. I can't think of an organization that has had more impact on dentistry as implant dentistry has been.
We're an academy. We should be presenting well-structured, evidence-based material that's clinically relevant. at a high level and maintain that, people will come to us because other places can't do that. And no other group has this multidisciplinary group that can do that. No other group. There's no one close. No one's close to it. And that's the whole thing about the Academy.
The Academy's Board of Directors created this video to capture an important page in the history of dentistry and chronicle the Academy's rise to become the world's leading dental implant organization. In fact, the development of osseointegrated implants parallels the growth of the Academy itself. Dentistry has undergone revolutionary changes since the introduction of osseointegration that has transformed the way we care for our patients. The Academy has been the centerpiece for sharing knowledge and the interchange of new ideas since our first meeting in 1985. The AO will continue to be at the forefront of implant dentistry as we enter our fourth decade and lead the way to the next transformation of dental science and clinical art. We hope you will join us as the journey continues. On behalf of the Academy of Osseointegration and for all those who have brought us here, I thank you.